Hello and welcome to the second tutorial for the IRIS Pro Training Series Pilatus PC-9A. In this tutorial we are going to look at the navigation radios, communication radios and other systems used to facilitate communication between yourself in the aircraft and the ground in one fashion or another. We are using the upcoming Advanced Edition for this tutorial. However, all the systems work exactly the same in the Standard Edition. The only difference is that in the Standard Edition you will not have use of an external power unit. With that being said, let's take a look at where we are. At the moment we are on the flight line at YPEA, or Pearce, Western Australia. This is the home of 2 FTS, where most RAAF pilots received their training in the PC-9. The reason I've chosen to use Pearce for this tutorial is it gives us clear access both to a TACAN, an NDB, an ILS, a VOR and several other aids. That being said, you can run through the steps that we undertake in this tutorial in any airfield that has the nav aid you wish to follow along in. So let's get in the aircraft and start having a look. Here we are sitting in the aircraft. And if we have a look, you'll notice that just below our instrument panels we have this bank of radio panels and of course our HSI controller and EFIS systems. Going from left to right, let's have a look at what we have. We have our Communication 1 radio, or COM1. This is an alphanumeric pad that we use to enter a frequency or preset frequency into the radio. This radio is the primary radio we are most likely to use to talk with ATC at any time. It also has an AM/FM capability. However, in the simulator this is not functional. This next panel across is our Communication 2 radio, or COM2. This is a more traditional style radio with a clear active and standby frequency. Again, it allows us to tune all the standard frequencies and we can select to use it as our primary source of communicating with the ground. Next to it is our EFIS control panel. We'll cover this more in depth later, but this allows us to interface both with our nav aids and our EFIS systems for things like setting up course lines with VORs and NDBs, changing our heading nav aid and items such as that. Next to it is our navigation and TACAN radio. This is a dual system radio. It functions both as a TACAN radio and a standard VOR DME radio. It is also the radio used for plugging in any ILS aids. Next to it is our ADF. The ADF is used for tuning non-directional beacons, and in the real life can also be used for tuning AM frequency radios such as 1332 or other broadcasters. However, in the simulation, obviously, this does not work at all, so we're just limited to non-directional beacons. Though there are add-ons which will allow you to use radio beacons, such as 3SH over here in Victoria, and their broadcasting towers as non-directional beacons. Finally, the last radio on this section is your transponder, which is a standard Mode 3 transponder, and we will cover its use in a moment. Below this set of radio panels is the radio head. Now the radio head is used for selecting which audio channel you're broadcasting on, what audio channel you're listening on, and also the volumes of both your cockpit interphone and the radios themselves in general. Now, it should be strongly noted that in the PC-9A, in both Flight Sim and Prepared, there is no volume control. As long as the radios are on, you've got volume. However, in the real aircraft, obviously, this would be different. So, with that being said, we're going to give some power to the aircraft. We'll do this in the advanced by connecting the external power unit. However, if you're running in the standard edition, simply a matter of switching your battery on rather than connecting the external power unit, but you should be aware, unless you're running FSUIPC or similar software, your battery is likely to drain very, very quickly. In the advanced version, the battery is an actual simulation in and of itself, and it should not drain quite as quickly as it would in Flight Sim, as it functions off proper amp drawage. So, we've just connected the external power unit, and you'll notice we've got basic system power coming on. I'm going to turn off my external strobes and everything here. I'm going to make certain my inverter is on battery or a generator. Either of these doesn't matter. I'm going to turn my avionics switches on. Now, a quirk of the advanced is that when you first turn on, you need to hit the CL button on your radio. This is not a feature that normally happens. It's just a quirk that's slid into the PC-9 Advance. So, let's take a look at the COM1 radio. Now, as you'll notice, we've got a frequency at the top here, a button next door to it, and a set of digit pads. Using the COM1 radio is fairly simple. We simply hit the CL button and we type in the frequency we are after. So let's say, for example, we wanted to talk with Pierce Tower. Pierce Tower operates on 118.3. So we'd simply type this in. 118.30. And we've just tuned 118.3. For the most part, this is how most people are going to use the COM1 radio. There are a set of preset frequencies, in which case you press the pre, and again you simply type in the value you're after. In the advanced, you're limited to a small number of presets. Normally you can set almost 1,000 presets in this radio, but we're limited to the ones currently down here. So if we take a quick look, we'll see at the moment we're on 366. If we look over here, that means that we're actually tuned to 264.5, or the roulette primary UHF channel. If we typed in 350, we would actually be tuned now to the primary ATIS at each sail. To switch back to the megahertz mode, it's simply a matter of pressing the COM1 frequency mode key, which will switch you back to the mode that you were in previously. So now we can easily tune in whatever radio frequency we want. If, however, you choose a frequency that is invalid, such as I did just now, the radio will refuse to move to that frequency and instead return to whatever was previously tuned. In this case, Pierce Tower on 118.30. Moving to the next radio, we have our COM1 radio. No, it's COM2 radio. The COM2 radio operates as follows. You have a volume control switch, which you can rotate and push to run a test. The test mode's not simulated in our sims, simply because it's not required. You have the button just here, which is used to switch between preset channels and standard entry, and if you press and hold, to activate the preset edit mode. We will cover all these in a moment. For the moment, we want to switch back to standard entry, which is active and standby mode. We have two rotary knobs. The inner knob is the 25K and 50K knob. This will move the decimal number, as you can see here. At the moment it is moving it by 5. If we want to move it by 2.5, a simple click simulates pulling out on that radio. We can now move it by 25 rather than, or 0.025 of a megahertz. What this does is allows us to tune rather than 0.85, 0.825 or 0.875 along the frequency dial. Because the radio only shows out to 2 decimal points, it will show 82, but it is really 825 or 88, where it's really 875. It's just something to be aware of. The outer tuning knob allows you to change the large digits, or the actual megahertz number. Scrolling down lowers the number, while scrolling up increases the number. You'll notice that as I've been doing this, it's been entering on the standby frequency. To switch which frequency you actually currently have active, simply a matter of pushing the push to transfer switch, which swaps the standby to the active and your active to standby. You can also enter active entry mode by pushing and holding this button for a period of time. At this point, the standby will change to a dash, signifying that it's no longer using the standby frequency, and any modifications you make will go instantly into the active frequency mode. To exit this mode, it is simply a matter of pushing the switch, the push to transfer mode, once. As you saw before, by pushing the small red button, we entered preset selection mode. In this mode, we have a number of channel presets, out to 9, that are preset in the radio and allow us to quickly change between the channels. This means that we can set up a communications plan from the start and not have to worry about trying to remember what frequencies we're going to be using. It's not uncommon, especially for military flights, during your briefing to have what's known as a channel brief, especially when you're flying formation. And rather than telling you to switch to channel 118.3, flight lead will simply tell the formation to push channel 1 2, 3, 4, and so on. So this allows you to actually have these channels ready. So when your flight lead or your briefing calls for a change in channel, it's just a simple matter of changing the dial. At the moment, we have 118.3 tuned into channel 1, 118.5 into channel 2, 135.9 into channel 3, and so on. If we wanted to edit these, we simply press and hold on that button. You'll notice that when we do, we start getting a flashing symbol. At this point, if I rotate the upper value while being on the megahertz with the button pressed in, you'll notice that I can change the channel. This allows me to select which channel I'm actually interacting with. By pressing the push to transfer switch, the number will start to blink at me. I'm now editing what channel 1's active frequency is going to be. So, to change this, I do it the exact same way as I would normally tune the radio. Let's say I wanted to put channel 122.3 into here. And you'll notice that because I've not done anything for a period of time, it's gone back to standard mode. It's because after a short period, the radio returns back to its active mode. It's simply to stop you forgetting that, oops, I was tuning the radio and forgot to move back. So we're going to press and hold here. Once more, enter the mode. Switch down to the second. Now we're just going to tune like normal to 122.8, or what some people will know as Unicom. So we've just entered 112.8 as the frequency. We're going to press the little red button, which takes us out of the mode. And now, if we switch to COM 2 and then back to COM 1, you'll notice it's remembering that we tuned 122.8. Both in the advanced and the standard model, any modifications you do to these presets is persistent. So you can set up the common radio frequencies you're going to use for wherever you're flying the PC-9 and be able to call them up quick and easy. Now, before we move on to the navigation radios, we should really take a quick look down here at our radio head panel. You'll notice that we've got 4 little lights here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is telling us what active radio we're currently listening to. So, at the moment, and broadcasting on, I should say, at the moment we're broadcasting on channel 1, or COM 1. We also currently have our VHF to push only. This means that we can hear channel 2. If we switch the audio rotary selector to 2, we're now broadcasting on COM 2. And if we push the VHF, UHF receiver button, we'd be able to continue to listen to COM 1. As so. It's just a matter of clicking the button and it'll switch between your radios. When you want to listen and see what navigation frequency you may be tuned to, given a NAV gives you, as most people will be aware, a Morse code signal, which is displayed on every chart and normally used to identify. It's simply a matter of clicking on the appropriate item down the bottom, and this will put the data through to your headset, or the speakers in the case of Microsoft Flight Simulator or Prepared 3D. you should be aware that the Morse code frequency is on a cycle, so you may have to actually have the channel active for a short period of time before you hear the identifier. It doesn't instantly come available. The radio doesn't know that you've just suddenly tuned it and want to know what's going on. So let's have a look at our navigation and tactical radio or TACAN radio. This radio is a dual mode radio. That means that it has two functions. It can operate in TACAN, which is displayed at the top here, and this is channels both in X-ray and Yankee, and is used primarily by military navigational aids, and a standard VOR DME megahertz coupled frequency. At the moment we're in what I term hybrid mode, which means we have the TACAN tuned and active because it's in our active slot, but we can also tune a standard VOR DME in our standby slot. If I want to actually just enter straight TACAN mode, with the TACAN active on the top and the VOR in the standby, I push the small push button down the side, similar to the one over on the COM2 radio. This will change the standby to display a TACAN on the bottom. At this point, I can use the large outer knob to tune the tens digits, like so, and the small inner knob for tuning the ones digit. If I click and simulate on it with the right mouse button and simulate pulling out the dial, I can then change between X-ray and Yankee frequencies. Left clicking simulates pushing the dial back in, and the inner knob once again returns to allowing me to change the ones digit. In most cases you'll be using the X-ray frequency. For example, Pierce operates on 75 X-ray, and you can see at the moment, if we look at our HSI here, we can see that we have a TACAN tuned. It's 0.5 nautical miles away. Our course line is set to 315, and we've got 0 knots relative ground speed to the aid. If I change my course line and bring it around to 346, you'll notice we're more or less in line with the aid, which, if we look outside the aircraft, is about right. That little box over there is Pierce's NAV TAC radio. NAV, VOR and TACAN is used for very precise instrument flying, but we'll cover this in a later tutorial. So that's how we tune a TACAN. What if we want to tune a standard VOR? Well, there are two ways we can do this. We can press the mode button and enter again this hybrid switch between the two modes. At this point, it's simply a matter of scrolling the outer knob, just like as if we were using the COM1 radio to change the larger frequency, and then using the inner knob to change the smaller frequency. It should be noted that this changes by increases of 0.05 no matter what. Pierce, is also on top of its TACAN, also has a VOR. It operates on 112.8. So we're going to tune that. As you can see, we've now tuned it in and it's on the standby. We press the swap or push to transfer switch. You'll see that it swaps over. The HSI here tells us that we've gone from TACAN to VOR, gives us our course, and in the case of at the moment, we're also getting a coupled DME frequency. Now, sometimes you will not get the DME information. If there is no distant measuring equipment radio co-located with the VOR, you will not get this set of information. It's something that is important to be aware of. Just like with the TACAN radio, however, if I wish to actually just be in navigation mode, it is simply a matter of pushing the nav-tac mode button down the bottom here, and this will allow me to enter another frequency on the standard civilian frequency numbers and switch between them. One neat little feature that comes with the PC-9's TACAN radio is the ability to switch what radio equipment you're using for your DME information. A number of military approaches will have you using a TACAN DME, but VOR information or ILS information from another aid. To do this, it is simply a matter of switching into hybrid mode. We'll select 75 X-ray here. Let's say we were flying and we wanted to use this coupled DME as our information source. Up here, we'd simply hit the DME hold switch and then switch our radio. You'll notice that it's telling us we're on 112.8 hold, which is where it's getting its data from, and we're 0.5 nautical miles. If I was to change the frequency, we're still getting this data. However, we're no longer getting any VOR information because we don't have anything tuned. It's just a neat little feature that can be used with the PC-9 and does come in handy. Tuning an ILS is just the same as tuning a VOR or DME. It's simply a matter of inserting the number into your standard navigation mode. So in the case of Pierce, if we were making an ILS approach on runway 18 left, for example, we would tune the localizer on 110.7 in our standby, put it across into our active, and you'll notice that we're getting a localizer information and our ADI and HSI are now showing the relative information. That covers pretty much the basics of using the navigation and TACAN radio. There is an active entry mode which, like the COM1 radio, can be entered by pressing and holding the button. However, most times you're not going to actually be using it. And from what I've been told by subject matter experts, it is rarely used in the real aircraft. Moving on to the ADF radio. The ADF radio allows you to tune to non-directional beacons. It also allows you to tune, as mentioned before, to standard nav aids, such as, communication aids, such as radio stations. However, in Flight Sim, this isn't modelled. What we're going to do here is we're going to look at the functions on this radio very quickly by tuning it to Pierce's NDB. Pierce has an NDB operating on a frequency of, if you give me one moment here, I'm just looking it up on the chart, 340. So, just like all the other radios, you'll notice we've got a standby mode and an active mode. The outer knob will change the hundreds digits. So in this case we're going to scroll down or turn the dial to the left and move it to the 300 mark. Now the inner tuning knob allows us to change our tens digits and our ones digits. With the dial pushed in, it changes our tens digits. So in this case 340. This is actually the frequency we want. However, if we click, we can then change the ones digit. So say we wanted to tune 345, we would click, change it to 3.5, then click again. We're now able to change the tens again. However, in the case of Pierce, we want 340. At this time, we push the push to transfer and switch it from standby to active. Now you'll notice we haven't had any change in our information over on our HSI. This is because we're currently in VOR and localizer mode. If we press the ADF button down here, you'll notice that we've switched to ADF mode and we only get a coarse needle. The PC-9 does have the ability to do a rough coarse based ADF. Now it's not exactly accurate. Most of the time you're going to be staying in NAV mode but pressing the double pointer selection mode here, which brings up the purple ADF mode option. This points to the current NAV aid. In our case, it's pointing to the Pierce NDB. This is also reflected over here on our RMI needle. If we press this button and change our source across to the ADF, like the NAV and the COM1, there is an active frequency mode, entry mode on this radio by pushing the button here and holding it. However, again, subject matter experts have told me for the most part in the real aircraft it does not get used, so we're not going to cover it in depth in this tutorial. Finally, we have the Mode 3 transponder. The transponder allows you to change between standby, on, alternate and test mode by moving the outer knob. You should be aware that while all the displays are simulated 100% correctly for this radio, it actually does not function beyond setting the squawk code in Flight Simulator. That's a limitation of the simulation, not of the actual radio. You can also change the marker mode for your transponder from mode A to mode B by pushing the button down here. Again, in the simulation, this has no effect. Now, unlike all the previous radios where you had a standby and active mode, with the transponder you do not. Everything you do is active entry. So, if we are going to change a frequency, you'll notice that we have a small triangle underneath the one at the moment. It's a little hard to see here. This is telling us which frequency we are currently editing. So if we move the inner dial left and right, you'll notice that we switch between 1 through to 7, and then it dials back to 0. If we push, it moves it 1 over, and again we can enter the next value. If we push again, it moves over once more, and again once more. If at any point we do not actively enter a frequency for longer than 3 seconds, it moves itself back to the first digit. Entering your current transponder or squawk code is as simple as that. If you're asked to ident and you were in the real aircraft, you would have your mode on or on alternate, and you would push the push to transfer switch. In the PC-9, this acts as the ident button, and you'll see that it squawks the little ident number here, code here, and lets them know that this is you and the like on their radar. The test mode also shows you the current flight level that's being reported, in our case 0002. So that covers the main parts of the radios. If, for example, we wanted to make certain we had the Pierce radio communication tuned correctly, for example, on 75 X-ray, we'd tune 75 X-ray here, and then we'd push, in our case, I believe it's the DME1 radio here. And listen for the radio frequency. There is the chance we're actually not going to get anything here because I can't remember if with the current setup that I have at Pierce I actually entered the data correctly. However, if I tune 119, which should give us one of the radios, as you can hear there, we currently have the radio frequency coming through. And that is a quick, simple rundown on how the navigation and communication radios work in the IRIS Pro Training Series PC-9A. Thank you for watching this tutorial. The next tutorial will cover taxiing, lineup, and the takeoff procedures in the PC-9. My name's Rob. Thank you for watching this tutorial, and I hope you enjoy both what you see here and our product.